10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 279. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 279 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. As always, so glad you are here. We hope to share some new jazz knowledge with you and help you along your practice journey to become the best musician possible. Today we're going to be looking at our lick of the month. We're going to be talking about a great McCoy Tyner lick that illustrates some of this pentatonic stuff that we've been talking about, albeit on a much higher level than the stuff that we are studying, but it'll just give you a glimpse into kind of the thinking between this pentatonic shifting and using different pentatonic scales when we're improvising. So as always, before we jump into the show, just wanted to remind you that this is a listener-supported podcast, which means that we do not have any advertisers on this show. We just bring you the material that we want to bring you without any interruptions. And the way to support the show is through our Patreon. And for a small monthly fee, you get a PDF along with every episode, which equates to 279 PDFs at this point. So if you'd like to become a supporter of the show, just go to 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners. You can check out all the membership options and the rewards that you get for each level, and you can get yourself signed up for instant access to the materials from this episode and every single other episode that we have ever done. Want to do a quick shout out to our new $5 patron. Thank you to Nat for joining up, and thank you to Kerry for editing your pledge from $3 up to $5 to get those extra benefits each and every week. So if you want to jump on that train, we've got over 300 people over there, a fantastic community that partakes in the materials from every single episode. 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up today. All right, let's jump into today's episode. So we've been talking about using some pentatonics for the past couple of weeks, and we are going to take a peek at how using some of these different pentatonics over particular chords really plays out in action. Today we're going to look at a great lick from the masterful pianist McCoy Tyner over one of my favorite jazz albums of all time, The Real McCoy, and this is from the composition Blues on the Corner. And we're going to look at the way that he plays over measures 8, 9, 10, and 11 of the blues, and how he uses some of this pentatonic shifting to create this really, really cool out effect, and then bringing it all back in and resolving it on the one chord. So before we talk about it, let's listen to the lick a couple of times. And I want you to pay attention to when it sounds like it's inside the chord changes and when it sounds like it's outside the chord changes. And then we're going to talk about exactly what he's doing and what pentatonics he's using. So you're definitely going to want to have the PDF up so you can be looking at this excerpt while we listen to it, and you can follow along, you can read along with the notes that you're hearing. So here is the lick. Okay, so you can hear that there's some really interesting stuff going on there, and now it's our job to kind of pull all that stuff out and figure out what it is. So if you look at the PDF, you'll notice that I've done my usual color coding to kind of explain what's going on in a visual manner, and we're really front-loading all the tension on this particular excerpt. So if you look at the first measure, that is measure 8 of a B-flat concert blues. So we're looking at the 6th chord there, which would be a concert G7. Now, as I said, this stuff is way more advanced than what we've been talking about in our lessons so far. We've been talking about, diatonic stuff or some stuff that's a little bit out, but we're not going nearly as far as what McCoy Tyner is doing. And my reason for presenting this line to you is to show you just how far it can actually go. So we got this really interesting thing over the G7 chord where he's actually playing a G flat major pentatonic over that G7 chord. It's kind of an altered sound, but it actually goes outside of even the altered scale. So we get this G7. So it's a really outside sound. So you can hear some of that stuff is really typical tensions that you would use over a dominant chord, like the flat 9, the sharp 9. But then he also has like the major 7 in there, which is giving it an extremely, extremely dissonant sound. Now, as he goes into the next measure, which is the 2 chord of the 2-5 in measure 9 and 10, he's using another really, really outside sound. So over at like a C minor 7 chord, he's using an A major pentatonic shape, which is another really interesting sound. It sounds like this. And that gets us all the way into the and of beat 3 using that A major pentatonic again. So it's really strange. He's using the major third all over the place, and it's a really interesting shape over that C minor 7 chord. And then he stays way out and sort of closes out that 2 chord measure by using an F sharp major shape. And it's kind of a pentatonic. He does not cover all the notes of that pentatonic, but it really is this super interesting shape. So he finishes that concert C minor 7 major by playing G sharp, A sharp, C sharp, F sharp, A sharp. And with the exception of the A sharp, all of those notes are extremely outside of that chord, that C minor 7. So it sounds like this. And one of the cool things about what he's playing here is that there's also some other really interesting things going on. He's using the interval of a fourth in a really cool way. He goes from C sharp to F sharp. He goes from B to E. So it's kind of this combination of like this pentatonic shifting with the interval of a fourth and just making it as out as possible. That makes this so interesting. Now, in the next measure, he goes back inside and he really does the C minor 7 to F7 to B flat in a very inside manner to resolve this line. So he's front loading the tension here. He's doing that pentatonic shifting in the first 2 measures of the lick, and then he's coming back inside. So the last 2 measures of the lick shouldn't be very challenging to your ears at all. So now that we've listened to each part of it and broken it down, now we want to go back to the original recording and hear the effect that it creates, like with the rhythm section at that lightning speed, how it really only works when it's being played at that original tempo and it's all being put together in the way that he originally intended it to be put together. If you were thinking that a lot of those sounds that I just played for you when I was playing it at like a snail's pace were really, really strange, you'd be right. But when you actually hear the original soloistic statement that McCoy is playing, he's really worked it out to a point where it just sounds great when it's played at tempo and it's played in context. So let's go back to the original recording. So you can really hear that it works much better over the original recording. And all that stuff kind of blends into, rather than hearing all of those individual pentatonics, what you just hear is like really tension-filled material for the first measure and a half. And then all of a sudden we start to come back in. And then when we finally land back on that B flat 7 chord, it's like, Nice release. And that's what we talk about so much on the show. And I think McCoy Tyner is just one of obviously, the masters of this. Now, one other thing that I can really hear when I listen to it at tempo is the use of those fourths and those really interesting intervals that he's using. And that really adds like an extra layer of just like, wow, this sounds so cool. So if you're not ready for this kind of stuff yet, just file this away under I will get to it when I start to understand this. But I just wanted to show you kind of how far you can take these pentatonics that we're learning. And while we're doing it on a very basic level, just like everything else in jazz, there's no limit to how far you can take it once you learn the basics, right? So hopefully this will make you a little bit more excited for the rest of this basic pentatonic lesson that we're going to do next month. And then eventually, hopefully, you'll be working on stuff like this. When you get to a point that you're looking for those new sounds, those pentatonics can provide it for you. So let me know if you have any questions about this. You can always get in touch with me on the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group, or you can email me at 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com. What we're going to do next week is we're going to do a tune of the month, and we're going to start to use some of these basic pentatonic substitutions and patterns that we've been learning over the past 2 weeks. We're going to start to actually put them into action over a standard chord progression. So remember, grab the PDF on our Patreon site so you can really get into the nitty-gritty of what we've been talking about. Always helps to have that visual aid and something to file away for later. 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up. Really looking forward to the next episode. As always, I hope you're all doing well out there, staying safe and healthy, and we will talk to you next time. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.